Okay, Instagram was being so weird, and I'm just getting on live now, and I didn't even get to type in whatever we were talking about, so bear with me. Okay, Instagram was being super weird, and it wasn't letting me go live, so probably no one is watching this, but it is Mental Health Monday. I'm coming at you from a new space. Sorry, I'm getting set up because I had you guys ready, and then Instagram wouldn't let me go live. So anyway, we're here. It's Mental Health Monday, and today's topic, we are talking about breaking down the stigma. And what I mean about breaking the stigma is talking about mental health openly and honestly and vulnerably, because while we've done such a good job, I think it's only getting better, right? I think, in my lifetime, I'm only 30, but I think we're doing a much better job at talking about it. And I have teenage clients that come into my office that use language that I didn't even have when I was their age. And so we're only getting better with it. But still, there is still a long way to go. So I wanted to talk about breaking down the stigma, and how we can just talk about mental health in our everyday lives and start to really just destigmatize it, because I think we could all benefit from talking about our mental health. That doesn't mean that we all have a mental health. We all know when we're doing well. We all know when we're not doing well. I don't like to throw labels or anything like that on it, so I'm not saying that we need to diagnose you and throw labels on it, but I think it's really important to talk about. Just like we talk about your physical health and the importance of health and wellness, mental health is a crucial component of that as well. And so the more that we can talk about it and have these conversations with people in our lives, friends, family, kids, the better the better we can be. And I think the less isolating it can feel when we are going through a mental health concern, or if we are struggling just with our mental health. And I think we all know what that looks like. No, I'm not saying that you have depression or anxiety. If you want to put those labels on it, you can, but we've all struggled with our mental health. I think that's being a human. We are open to many different emotions, and we go through many different emotions. It's very common for us to, feel great in the morning and feel totally different at the end of the day. And that's called life. Life is hard, and we don't always acknowledge that what we're doing is hard. You guys kind of threw some questions out there about talking about mental health, and what it looks like. A lot of the questions I got, I will just preface this off, is that they're coming from a women's perspective. Thank you, Whitney. I'm not even wearing makeup. But oh yeah, now I'm lost. But yeah, so a lot of these questions were specifically talking about, I think, women in mental health and destigmatizing that. So I'm going to be talking about it mostly from that frame point, or that point of perspective. You can apply this to anything with the questions I got. Since most of my audience is women, I think this could be really great to talk about. First of all, I think when we talk about women and our mental health, one of the questions I got was regarding postpartum depression, which is really interesting, because for a lot of women, I feel like the idea of postpartum depression, or more likely postpartum, people leaving the depression off, is kind of very normalized now. I'm not saying it all, but we've kind of gotten to a place where when someone says, hey, I was going through really hard postpartum depression, most of the time people are like, oh, I'm so sorry about that. That must have been really difficult. But I feel like when you talk about depression outside, from a woman, when you outside of that, there's still this big stigma of what it means to feel a certain way. With the postpartum depression, it makes a lot of sense, right? Because when you think about it, when you're pregnant, you are flooded with hormones, and you have all these different hormones, and then you give birth to your baby, and your hormones kind of bottom out, and they're fluctuating. So everyone's like, oh yeah, of course you wouldn't feel good. Of course, it must be really difficult. And I think there's a lot more kindness. And again, I know it wasn't always like that with postpartum depression. But I think we've come a long way, especially in the last 10 to 15 years, to be like, of course, let's normalize it. It's understanding. Let's talk about it. Doctors talk to you about it. I used to intern at UNC Hospital on their mother-baby unit not at UNC. No, it was at Duke Hospital. It doesn't matter. But I used to intern when I was in my master's, and you would give out a PHQ-9, which is basically a depression screening for every mother that came in for all of her postpartum visits. And that was standard. And then if they scored higher, I would come in and I'd talk to them about it. But like normal, I mean, in some ways normalized, right? Like there was kind of this regulated thing. But what does it mean if we're feeling these ways without a pregnancy attached to it? I think that is the part where for a lot of women, it can get tricky. It can feel isolating. It feels like, oh, we had this cause and effect before, but what if we're feeling this way now? And I think it's start talking about it. The way that we kind of break down these barriers, and again, I think we're doing such a good job, but as we talk about these things, right? It is finding a safe friend or a safe person within your group of friends who you feel vulnerable to share what's going on with your life and saying, hey, do you have time to talk? I really need to chat something out with you. And I think it's having these conversations. I think it's having these conversations daily. I think even when we think back, even if your kids are coming to you, I know a lot of you are mothers and, you're like, hey, how are you doing? Offer a space to really let your child, and this, you don't even have to have a child to do this, but really offer a space where you can listen to someone. If they say, hey, it's fine, it's okay. My favorite thing that I used to say, and you can use this too, but I used to say, do you see that deer? I'm sorry. You saw that. You saw that. See? I'm not lying about my wildlife. Okay, but we're talking about mental health, not the deer behind me. But it's creating a space where it feels like comfortable to talk about these things. And if the kids are like, oh, it's okay. My favorite thing, what I was going to say is okay is not a feeling. Fine is not a feeling. Pick another emotion. Like, and if kids are having trouble, identifying emotions, you can provide that knowledge and just say to someone, well, walk me through your day. Tell me about your day. And I think for you can help them draw parallels, because I know kids don't always have the language. Adults don't always have the language to use on how to describe their feelings and their emotions. So it's okay to say, like, walk me through your day, hold space for it. And I think you can also, like when someone says, when you ask them how they are, allow that space. And it's not about fixing it. I think that's a lot of times where a stigma comes from. We're feeling a certain way. We feel isolated. We feel like we're alone. We feel like no one understands. Last week, we talked about self-compassion. So if you didn't catch last week's, definitely check that out. But basically, self-compassion is granting ourselves the understanding that we are not alone. It is okay for us feeling how we're feeling, and other people have felt the same way. So it's really, making sure that we're having these conversations and finding a space where we can just sit and listen with someone. It's not about fixing. It's not about advice. I think it's very easy for us to hear that someone's had a bad day or someone's having a difficulty, and it's like, well, have you tried this? Have you tried this? Have you tried this? And that just leaves people isolated. And then that just keeps the stigma going, because people don't want to talk about it, because they feel like people don't understand, because all people want is to be validated. So I think it's finding the pockets where you can be honest and vulnerable with someone and share with them, and also practice just listening and reflecting back to that person, like, wow, that sounds really difficult, or, oh, I hate that you went through that. Like, that must be really tough. It's not really knowing always, what the right thing to say or the advice to fix it or that sort of thing, but it's just really just creating a space where someone feels comfortable to share. And like I said, I think it is really just talking about this. We're getting better. We're moving forward. But a lot of us are struggling. I mean, I think there's been, especially with the pandemic, there's some research suggesting, and as of course, that anxiety and depression is rising. I, as a therapist, have never really been busier. I think mental health has been definitely a buzzword during the pandemic, which it was, but I'm grateful for that from a therapist perspective, because I think this allowed us the first time for a long time to really reflect into our lives and talk about mental health, and also allow us to be like, well, how is my mental health? What do I need? And I think the idea is, which brings me back to being a therapist, therapy. I think there is still this idea, and again, we're progressing, but there's still this idea that something traumatic has to happen in your life for you to sit on a couch with someone, sit in a chair with someone, and tell them what's going on. Everyone should go to therapy. And I know that I'm a bit biased because I'm a therapist, but we could all benefit from curating a space in our life where we feel comfortable to talk to a third party just about the things that are going on, about things that are going in our day. I read a really good meme the other day. I saw it somewhere, and it basically sums up my job, and it sums up my client's experience. And it's, I go to therapy to learn how to deal with people who don't go to therapy. And I think that's true. I think that sums up my job. I think it sums up our emotions. Is we're trying to figure out how to handle different people. If people can hold space for our emotions, if our relationships are healthy, and our relationships with people contribute to our mental health. So I think, like I said, the best thing we can do is talk about it, take care of ourselves, make space for it, normalize making space for it, normalizing prioritizing your mental health, whether that means saying no to something, whether that means saying yes to something. People don't always have to understand, but they may not understand why you're taking the time or the space to take care of your mental health. But if people love you, if people are healthy, if people care about you, genuinely care about you, they will respect your decision. I always tell that even when I'm working with clients, so you don't have to understand someone, but can you respect that person's decision? And I think, that too sums up, how we talk about mental health. I think there is no shame in experiencing mental difficulties or emotional difficulties from time to time. I think we, if we're all sitting down here and being honest with ourselves, we all know friends and family members that have struggled, whether or not we attach a label to it, which I'm not suggesting we have to, but we can all think of someone who's struggled, and it's scary to bring that up because I think there's this idea that we're unwell or we're unhealthy if we're talking about this, but I think quite the opposite. We're talking about our feelings. That's how we move through things. Suffering is essentially pain. So any type of pain you experience, emotional, mental, physical, versus resistance. And when I mean resistance is fighting and saying, hey, I'm not feeling what I'm feeling. That is when we suffer. And when we feel like we have to resist our pain and we don't have space to talk about it, that's when people's mental health really starts to decline. And so, really just having these conversations, checking in with your people, also finding a space for you to check into, I think can be really, really helpful. The other kind of question we got brought up, and, I think so the idea of medication too. I think this is something that's still a hot button issue. Antidepressants, SSRIs, which that's got really complicated, but selective serotonin re-up inhibitor. And basically those are your things that are found in your standard antidepressants that increase your mood and decrease your anxiety. So that's all a fancy word for that. They are prescribed at an all-time high. And I don't say that to suggest that, oh no, we're unwell, but they can work and they're a tool. And I think a lot of people, the most stigma I see, it's not so much going to therapy. I think in different pockets, therapy can mean different things. But I still do think when I'm coming in with clients, I'm talking to people, there's still this idea of medication. That if we're taking medication, we can't manage it on our own. What the heck is managing it on our own? What is that? I mean, you're a human. That whole idea when people have a baby, that whole adage, it takes a village. It takes a village too with your mental health. It takes support. And if a dosage of a medication that is prescribed correctly, and I'm not going to get in this whole thing of over-medicating, that's another topic. But if you find someone who you trust and there's a dosage that allows you to participate fully in your life and increase your quality of life, why not? If someone had an HIV diagnosis, they would be taking daily medication each day that would keep them healthy, going, we wouldn't say anything like that. We'd say, good, of course, we want you to take your medication. If someone had another chronic long-term illness, such as diabetes, where you have to manage insulin, all of that, we would, of course, say, good, take your, make sure your insulin's right, use your insulin, make sure your blood sugar's right. we would be open to that. We would applaud them for taking care of themselves. But there's still this idea of, oh, we take something. We should be able to do this on our own. And I think a lot of the stigma, because when I talk to people and I have these conversations openly, I don't hear my friends, my family members, my clients actually judging other people for taking medications. I more so hear them judging themselves, where they're saying, I should be able to do this. I shouldn't need this. And I think it goes back to, like I said, what I was talking about last week, this lack of self-compassion that we have for ourselves, that if a medication helps you, feels like you can get up and you can perform and you can do the tasks that you do, you can get your kids in the car, you can get your kids ready, you can get food on the table, you can do your job, why not? Why not? It's a tool. And, when we think about this, I had someone kind of say something to me, but we're going to talk about superheroes for a second. There's a point I'm making. All these superheroes, these Marvel characters, all kinds of things, they have special abilities or they have tools that help them be these amazing superheroes and save the world. Thor has his hammer, Mew Mew, whatever, I can never say it, I call it Mew Mew, but Thor has his hammer, Captain America has a shield, Iron Man has his suit. Iron Man is Iron Man because he has a suit. These are all tools that make them these amazing people. That's how I try to think about our medication. If it's a tool that allows you to function fully in your life, why not? If that allows you, there is nothing wrong. It's not that you can't handle on your own. First of all, we're all biologically different. What a medication that could work for me could work totally different for someone else because our brain are all different. So you may genetically make a lower amount of serotonin, or your diet contributes to lower amounts of serotonin. So if something like an antidepressant where it raises your serotonin, decreases your anxiety, helps you use tools, why not? That is my thing. Why not? You don't have to save the world and everything. I think the stigma mostly is really not around taking the medications. I hear people in my life talking very openly, and I know there are still people that don't and think, oh, they're just over-medicating you. But I also think it's up for us as humans to advocate for ourselves and say, hey, this has really been helpful for me. I will be very honest with you as I'm talking. I'm a therapist. I go to therapy. That's no surprise. I think every therapist should see therapy. I applaud that. I also take an SSRI every single day because I'm a human and I have anxiety, and there was a lot of stigma, I will admit, for myself in saying I'm a therapist. I should be able to handle this because I teach people. Talking to someone third party and utilizing skills is very different than dealing with your own mental health. Not that I don't do my work, I do my work, but I'm sharing this with you. It's a tool that allows me to show up even better for the people around me and increase my quality of life. And I think we're all looking to increase our quality of life. So, there's kind of my rant on medication, but it's a tool. Superheroes have tools. We can use these tools for ourselves. So I think it can be really important to talk about medication and openly. I understand it's your health information. You don't have to, be blaring from the rooftops, I take X, Y, and Z. No, if that doesn't feel comfortable. But know that if that's something that you need for your mental health, good for you. I applaud you for taking care of yourself, just like we would applaud anyone else taking care of a chronic, long-term physical illness. I applaud you for taking care of your health. And, for those of you joining and stuff, we were talking about medication. Basically, the long, quick and dirty of it is the stigma is usually on ourselves. We feel like we should be able to handle it. I don't really hear the stigma from other people around us. Yes, there are people that think, oh, you should be able to, but I think that's a very antiquated idea because no one is teaching us how to take care of our mental health. We go to school and, I think about my schooling all the time, and I know, again, that's another rant. But from elementary school to high school, math, science, social studies, all this stuff, no one taught you how to take care of your mental health. When I listen and read things, when people are teaching kids to belly breathe now, which is basically a breathing technique, it's fantastic. No, it kind of is in all of our heads, it is, but I think we're this, and it goes back to what I was talking about last week, but we're our own worst critics on this. I think we've come a long way. The people around us and people who love us, if they just want us to take care of ourselves, and they're also going to see a benefit if we're taking care of ourselves well. They reap the benefits of it too. It's not, yes, it's for you to feel well, but I think it's also phrasing, like if you're having trouble with someone who's really struggling or giving you a hard time about therapy, medication, anything like that, I think a really great way to phrase it is like, I do this so I can show up even better in my daily life for myself and for you. I feel like I can, listen and be more engaged when I take care of my mental health or I make space for me. You can put it back on the other person. You can say you show up even better for them, for their relationship, for your commitments when you're taking care of yourself. And that's not really, I don't think many people can argue that. I mean, maybe they can hoof, but it kind of is, I think it gives it a nice food for thought and allows you to advocate for yourself. And then the other really question talked about is also like how to normalize emotions. I got into a really great conversation, and I'm just reading one of the comments here. Yes, I mean, we are getting so much better. And I know I've kind of said this in and out, we are. And that's because of you guys. That's because everyone who's joined here and wants to, join the conversation, talk about this. We're doing a really good job. I know it's not all gone, but I think we are doing a really good job, and that's just thanks to people, every one of you, taking care of yourself, making space for yourself, making sure you're checking in, and I love seeing that, and I love seeing us grow. But it's also idea that we're like not allowed to have emotions. Also, I think there can be some stigma for some people who have shared their diagnosis, and then when they do show a variability in emotions, because they're humans, they may find family members, friends saying, oh, is your depression under control? Is your anxiety under control? You are allowed to have emotions. If people are asking you those questions in your life, I know sometimes those are genuine concern questions. Listen, I ask my clients, I do symptom check-ins all the time. Genuine concern questions. But let's normalizing having emotions. You can have anxiety and experience a wide range of emotions throughout the day. You can have depression and experience. You're human. You're going to have emotions. And I think if people are like asking like, are you taking care of your mental health? You seem down today. That is just because they are uncomfortable and they don't know how to talk about it. And I think that can be a great opportunity, if you feel comfortable, to start the conversation and say, hey, what made you ask that? I'm curious. Where's that thought coming from? I actually feel like I'm taking care of myself. I'm just feeling angry today. Let's talk about that. That can be a really great way to kind of put the question back on the other person, because you don't have to answer anything you don't want to answer. And you're allowed to have this whole why am I talking about mental health Monday? You're allowed to have emotions. I want you to have emotions. You're human. You're a human. You're going to have feelings. I have feelings. I have lots of feelings. You're allowed to have emotions. I mean, I think it's fair, to put it back on another person and say, like, why are you asking me this? I'm curious because I feel like I'm taking care of myself. But it makes me wonder if, like, why did you ask that? Are you worried that I'm not doing well? But at least I think that opens up the lines of communication, because this is all about communication. This is all about advocating for yourself, talking about these things with family and friends, providing space to check in with yourself daily. And I shared something in my stories earlier. You can take 5 minutes a day to check in with your mental health, but that legitimately makes a world of difference. Moving forward. Just 5 minutes. If you can't do therapy, go on Pinterest and start typing in like mental health check-ins on Pinterest. You're going to get a lot of different tools. Half the stuff that I post on my stories, I get from Pinterest. So you can find little ways to check in. I know therapy, and I'm going to put up a slide with ways to find therapists, and all that stuff. But you're allowed to have emotions. And I think talking about them, I think one thing I wanted to add is when I am talking to you about finding a place to, talk with family members, friends, and asking you to be vulnerable, I always say this with my caveat to vulnerability. And for those of you who are familiar with vulnerability, Oh, thank you. I'm glad the resources and the things that I do share are helpful. That's why I do this. I really do this for you guys because I want to provide a space. I'm not here to give advice. I'm not here to tell you how to live your life. No. But a space just to talk about this stuff and hopefully give you some food for thought as you kind of go about your day and you talk with more people. But vulnerability, I think a lot of people are like, okay, I need to be honest. I need to be honest in every aspect of my life. I need to be vulnerable. The caveat to vulnerability is not everyone is safe to share your vulnerability. So that's why I really, you know your gut, and the people who you can be vulnerable with, trust your gut. Your gut, your intuition, whatever you want to call it, is almost right 100% of the time. It really is. We get disconnected from it because our brain is running with all these things, but our intuition is almost always right. If you feel off about sharing openly about mental health concerns with someone, that's probably not a person to share or be vulnerable with. But you probably also know that feeling when you're with a friend, you're with a family member, and you just feel comfortable to let your guard down. That is a person that I would recommend, sharing and talking about mental health. And I mean, I even think asking the question, how is your mental health? And I know some people are probably going to be like, but I think that's even a way to destigmatize it. It's not this elephant in the room. It's something important. We all, when I talk to clients, to me, there are 4 aspects of health. There's your physical health, there's your mental health, there's your emotional health, and there's your spiritual health. And I don't mean like just going to church. If that's part of your spirit, but like basically what I mean by spiritual health is finding something that you are passionate about and that you like to do and that brings you joy and that brings you excitement. Like, so finding ways, talk about that stuff. That's a great check-in to do even daily, is like, where am I at physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually? And like really allowing yourself 5 minutes to think about it. But I think starting the conversation, it starts with communication. It starts with each and every one of us being open about our feelings. When someone asks you, how are you? I challenge you to be honest. I think the expected response is, good, I'm good, how are you? Good, and you kind of move forward. It just becomes like a nicety. It's just kind of, mannerisms. But I challenge you to be honest. It may catch people off guard. I've done it before, or I will even say when people are like, I'm doing really bad, I'm like, whoa, like that. Sometimes I don't expect that answer, but I challenge you to hold space for that and really ask people and in tune, because that helps destigmatize mental health. That helps curate space for people to start thinking about their emotions and, verbalize them and talk about them. It is 8:30 and I try to keep my mental health Mondays to 30 minutes just because I can ramble on. I talk. But I am going to wrap up here today. I hope this was helpful for you. If you didn't check out last week's Mental Health Monday, I talked about self-compassion, which is probably a really good one to listen to if you haven't, because it kind of talks about this too, which I think these 2 topics, destigmatizing and self-compassion, kind of go hand in hand, because often we're our own worst critics. We stigmatize ourselves more than anyone else does. We're, the meanest person to us, and I think that contributes to our mental health and how we approach it. So there's that. We can certainly continue this conversation in the comments and stories. But thank you so much for joining in and taking time out of your busy week, taking time on this Monday evening with me. I always do this. I do this for you guys. I enjoy it. But I hope you have a good night, and I hope you find 5 minutes to check in with yourself and honor whatever your needs are, whether it's to lay in bed, lie on the couch, extra snuggles with the babies, kids, puppies, husbands, wives, partners, whoever. Take time for you. Thank you for joining. Bye.